July 8, 1947, the Roswell Daily Record publishes a headline that will become legendary. RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The United States Army Air Forces has just issued an official press release. They've recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The story goes national. It's on radio, it's in newspapers across America. For one day, the U.S. military admits they have a flying saucer, and then everything changes. 24 hours later, the military retracts the story. They say it was a mistake. It wasn't a flying disc, it was just a weather balloon. Case closed. But that retraction raises more questions than it answers. Why did the military initially call it a flying disc? What really crashed in that New Mexico desert? And why, 77 years later, are we still talking about it? Today, we're investigating the most famous UFO incident in history. And the truth is far more complex than either believers or skeptics usually admit. Welcome back to Beyond Our World, where science meets mystery. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into Roswell, the incident that launched 1,000 conspiracy theories and changed how we think about UFOs forever. But here's what makes this different. We're going to separate documented facts from mythology. We're going to look at what the government has admitted, what witnesses claimed, and what the evidence actually shows. Because the real story of Roswell is fascinating enough without embellishment. If you're new here, this channel investigates space mysteries, unexplained phenomena, and the frontiers of science using evidence and critical analysis. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because we post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, let's go back to July 1947 and understand what actually happened. And I promise you, even the official story is stranger than you might think. Early July 1947, William Mac Brazel is a ranch manager working on the J.B. Foster Ranch, about 75 miles northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. It's remote, isolated desert country. On July 3rd, Brazel is checking on his sheep after a severe thunderstorm when he discovers something unusual. Scattered across his property is debris, lots of it. Strange metallic material, rubber strips, tinfoil, tough paper, and sticks. It's spread over a large area, maybe 3/4 of a mile long. Brazel has seen weather balloons before. This doesn't look quite like that, but he's not sure what it is. He collects some of the material and takes it home. On July 7th, he drives into Roswell and shows the debris to Sheriff George Wilcox. Wilcox calls the local military base, Roswell Army Air Field, home to the 509th Composite Group, the only atomic bomb squadron in the world at that time. Major Jesse Marcel, an intelligence officer, is sent to investigate. Marcel and another officer, Captain Sheridan Cavett, drive out to the ranch with Brazel. They examine the debris field. Marcel later describes it as covering a large area with unusual materials. He collects samples and brings them back to the base. Now here's where it gets interesting. On July 8th, the base public information officer, Lieutenant Walter Haut, issues a press release. This is an official military statement. It reads, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Air Field, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Chaves County. A flying disc. Not a weather balloon. A disc." The press release is picked up by wire services. It's published in newspapers nationwide. The Roswell Daily Record runs the famous headline. Radio stations broadcast it. For a few hours, the story is everywhere. The military has recovered a flying saucer. But then, everything changes. Later that same day, higher-ranking officers at 8th Air Force Headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas, take control of the situation. Brigadier General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, holds a press conference. He shows debris to reporters, weather balloon and radar reflector materials. He explains that Major Marcel made a mistake. It was just a weather balloon with a radar target attached. Nothing unusual. Just a simple misidentification. Newspapers publish corrections. The flying disc story disappears. It becomes a footnote. A silly mistake by overeager military personnel who confused a weather balloon for something exotic. And for the next 30 years, that's where the story stays. A minor, embarrassing incident. forgotten by almost everyone. But then, in the late 1970s, something changes. UFO researchers start interviewing people who were in Roswell in 1947, and these witnesses tell a very different story. Major Jesse Marcel, now retired, speaks publicly. He says the debris he recovered was not from any weather balloon. He describes the material as incredibly light but impossibly strong. Metal that wouldn't burn, material with strange symbols or writing on it. He says the debris was unusual, unlike anything he'd seen before. And he was an intelligence officer. His job was to identify aircraft and technology. He knew what weather balloons looked like. Other witnesses come forward. Some claim they saw the crash site, and the debris was far more extensive than the official story suggested. Some claim there were multiple sites. Some claim there were bodies. Alien bodies. Small humanoid figures recovered from the wreckage. And some claim the military conducted an elaborate cover-up, threatening witnesses into silence. By the 1980s, Roswell has transformed from a forgotten incident into the most famous UFO case in history. Books are written. Documentaries are made. The town of Roswell embraces the mythology, becoming a tourist destination with alien-themed museums, restaurants, and festivals. The story takes on a life of its own, and conspiracy theories flourish. The government is hiding alien spacecraft at Area 51. They're reverse engineering alien technology. They have alien bodies in cold storage. Roswell becomes the foundation for decades of UFO lore. But what's actually true? Let's look at what we know for certain, what the government has admitted, and what remains unexplained. Because the documented facts are complicated, and they don't fit neatly into either the "it was aliens" narrative or the "it was just a balloon" dismissal. Here's what we know beyond dispute. Something crashed near Roswell in July 1947. The military recovered debris. The military initially called it a flying disc in an official press release. The military then retracted that statement and called it a weather balloon. Major Jesse Marcel, a trained intelligence officer, believed the debris was unusual. Multiple witnesses over the years have described the material as having strange properties. The government's explanation changed multiple times over the decades. These are documented facts. Now let's examine the government's explanations. In 1947, they said weather balloon. That explanation stood for 47 years. But in 1994, the U.S. Air Force released a report, and they admitted they'd been lying. It wasn't a weather balloon. It was something else, something classified. They revealed that the debris came from Project Mogul. This was a top-secret program using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The balloons carried acoustic sensors designed to pick up sound waves from nuclear explosions. They were launched from Alamogordo, New Mexico, not far from Roswell. The balloons were made of neoprene and polyethylene. The radar reflectors were made of balsa wood and foil. This explained the debris field Mac Brazel found. According to the Air Force, the reason for the initial flying disc announcement was confusion. The officers at Roswell didn't know about Project Mogul. It was so classified that even intelligence officers weren't briefed. When they saw unusual debris with radar reflectors, they didn't recognize it. They thought it might be one of the flying discs that had been reported in newspapers that summer. Remember, 1947 was the summer of flying saucer sightings. Kenneth Arnold had reported seeing 9 disc-shaped objects near Mount Rainier in June. The term flying saucer had just entered the public consciousness. Officers at Roswell, seeing strange debris and hearing about flying saucers in the news, jumped to conclusions. Higher-ranking officers at 8th Air Force Headquarters knew about Project Mogul. They immediately recognized what the debris was. But they couldn't reveal a top-secret program, so they used the weather balloon cover story. It was partially true. Mogul was essentially a high-tech weather balloon. But it wasn't the whole truth. This 1994 explanation makes sense. It explains why the debris had unusual materials that Brazel didn't immediately recognize. It explains why the initial announcement mentioned a flying disc. It explains the weather balloon cover story. And it explains why the truth wasn't revealed for decades. The program was classified, but UFO researchers weren't satisfied. They argued that Project Mogul didn't explain everything. Witnesses had described debris with impossible properties, metal that couldn't be bent or burned, material that was incredibly light but incredibly strong, material with strange symbols. Some witnesses claimed there were multiple crash sites. And most controversially, some witnesses claimed there were bodies. In response to these continuing claims, the Air Force released another report in 1997, 50 years after the incident. This report addressed the body claims. The Air Force admitted that witnesses may have seen bodies, but not alien bodies, human bodies, from unrelated incidents. The report explained that the Air Force conducted high-altitude research in the 1950s using anthropomorphic dummies. These dummies were dropped from balloons to test parachute systems and survival equipment. Some of these tests occurred near Roswell. Witnesses who claimed they saw alien bodies in the 1940s were actually remembering these dummy drops from the 1950s. Their memories had conflated different events across time. The report also mentioned that in 1956, a KC-97 aircraft crashed near Roswell, killing the crew. The bodies were burned and disfigured. Some witnesses might have seen this recovery operation and later misremembered it as being connected to the 1947 incident. The Air Force was essentially saying that the Roswell story is a combination of real events, misidentifications, and confused memories. The 1947 debris was from Project Mogul. The body stories came from unrelated incidents in the 1950s. People's memories merged these separate events into a single alien crash narrative. This explanation is plausible. We know human memory is unreliable. We know memories can change over time. We know that witness testimony decades after an event is often inaccurate. But skeptics of the Air Force explanation point out problems. First, Project Mogul balloons crashed relatively frequently. Why did this particular crash generate such confusion? If the officers at Roswell had seen balloon debris before, even if they didn't know it was Mogul, wouldn't they recognize it as balloon material? Second, Major Jesse Marcel was an intelligence officer. His job was to identify aircraft, technology, and potential threats. Is it plausible that he couldn't identify balloon debris? Even unusual balloon debris? Third, some witnesses describe the debris as having properties that don't match Mogul materials. Metal that wouldn't burn. Material that would return to its original shape when crumpled. Foil-like material with strange symbols or writing. Mogul used conventional materials, neoprene, polyethylene, balsa wood, aluminum foil, and tape. None of these have the exotic properties some witnesses described. Fourth, the memory confusion explanation for the bodies is problematic. The Air Force is claiming that people confused events from the 1950s with events from 1947. But some witnesses gave their accounts in the 1970s and 1980s, not decades later. Would their memories really be that confused about events only 30 years prior? And fifth, why did the government change its story multiple times? If it was really just a Mogul balloon, why not reveal that immediately after the project was declassified? Why wait until 1994? These questions keep the controversy alive. Because even if you accept the official explanation, the government's handling of the incident has been suspicious. They lied for 47 years. They admitted they lied. Then they provided an explanation that many find incomplete. That's not a recipe for building trust. So let's examine the alien hypothesis. Is it possible that what crashed at Roswell was an extraterrestrial spacecraft? Let's be clear about what we'd need for this to be true. We'd need aliens to exist. We'd need them to have the technology to travel to Earth. We'd need them to have crashed in the New Mexico desert. We'd need the U.S. government to have recovered the craft and kept it secret for 77 years. And we'd need all of this to have happened without any physical proof ever reaching the public. No fragments of alien material, no leaked photographs, no whistleblowers with evidence, just testimony. Now, none of this is impossible, but it requires a lot of assumptions. And it requires a government cover-up lasting nearly 8 decades, involving thousands of people, with 0 leaks of physical evidence. That's an extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The evidence we have is testimony, some of it from credible witnesses like Major Marcel. But testimony alone, especially testimony given decades after the fact, isn't enough to prove alien visitation. However, there are some intriguing details that don't fit neatly into the official explanation. Multiple witnesses describe the debris as having unusual properties. Some describe material that was metal-like but incredibly light. Material that couldn't be cut, burned, or permanently bent. Material that would return to its original shape. Now, it's possible these witnesses are misremembering, or exaggerating, or lying. But it's also possible they saw something that wasn't from Project Mogul. What could that be? One possibility is experimental military technology. In 1947, the U.S. was testing all kinds of exotic materials and aircraft. The Roswell Army Air Field was home to the 509th Composite Group, the only unit equipped with atomic bombs. It was one of the most secure and advanced military installations in the world. Is it possible they were testing something beyond Project Mogul? Something so secret that even 77 years later, it remains classified? Some researchers have speculated about experimental aircraft, maybe early stealth technology, maybe advanced materials, maybe radiation shielding technology related to atomic weapons. If something like that crashed, it would explain the unusual debris properties. It would explain why the military was so secretive. And it would explain why they've never fully revealed the truth. Another possibility, and this is speculative, is that it really was an extraterrestrial craft, but the government genuinely has no idea what it was. Maybe they recovered debris, studied it, couldn't figure it out, and decided the safest course was to deny everything. But this raises the question, why not reveal it now? What would the government gain from continuing to hide alien debris 77 years later, unless they're still studying it? Unless they've learned things from it that provide a military or technological advantage? Unless revealing it would expose capabilities they want to keep secret? Or unless they're simply so invested in the cover-up that admitting the truth would be too damaging to institutional credibility? These are all speculations. But they show that even if we don't accept the alien hypothesis, the official story has gaps. And where there are gaps, questions persist. Let's talk about the witnesses, because this is where the Roswell case gets complicated. Over the years, hundreds of people have claimed to be witnesses or to have inside knowledge. Some are credible, some are clearly not. Major Jesse Marcel is the most credible witness. He was there, he handled the debris, he was a trained military officer. His testimony is consistent over multiple interviews. He never claimed to have seen alien bodies. He never claimed to know for certain it was extraterrestrial. He simply said the material was unusual and didn't match any weather balloon he'd ever seen. That's a measured, credible statement. Other witnesses are more problematic. Some claim they saw alien bodies but provided no proof. Some claim to have handled debris but couldn't produce any. Some gave testimony that contradicts other witnesses or known facts. And some witnesses admitted they lied or exaggerated. Glenn Dennis, a mortician in Roswell, claimed he was asked by the military to provide child-sized coffins. He claimed a nurse friend told him about autopsies on alien bodies. But researchers found inconsistencies in his story. The nurse he named may not have existed. His timeline didn't match other events. His story is now considered dubious at best. Then there's the alien autopsy film that surfaced in 1995, footage supposedly showing an autopsy of an alien body from Roswell. It was later revealed to be a hoax. The filmmaker admitted it was staged, but for years it convinced many people that Roswell involved alien bodies. This highlights a problem with the Roswell case. So much mythology, hoaxing, and exaggeration has accumulated over the decades that separating truth from fiction is almost impossible. We're 77 years past the event. Most witnesses are dead. Memories are unreliable. Documents are classified or destroyed. Physical evidence, if it ever existed, is gone or hidden. We're left with competing narratives and no way to definitively prove which one is correct. But here's what's undeniable. The US government lied about Roswell for 47 years. They said it was a weather balloon when it was actually a classified spy balloon program. This is documented fact. The government admitted it in 1994. They lied. And if they lied once, could they be lying still? That's the question that fuels continued interest in Roswell. Because once trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. So where are we today? The official explanation is Project Mogul, a classified balloon program. Debris that wasn't immediately recognized by local officers. A weather balloon cover story to protect the classified program. And memory confusion about events from the 1950s creating the alien body stories. This explanation is plausible. It fits most of the known facts. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the exotic debris properties some witnesses described. It doesn't explain why so many witnesses, including credible ones like Marcel, insisted the debris was unusual. And it doesn't fully explain the government's decades of secrecy and shifting explanations. The alien hypothesis is possible, but unproven. It requires accepting testimony without physical evidence. It requires believing in a decades-long cover-up involving thousands of people. It requires assumptions about alien visitation that we can't verify. But it's not impossible. And given that the government has admitted lying about Roswell, the possibility remains on the table. There's also the middle ground. Something unusual crashed. Maybe experimental technology, maybe something else, but not necessarily alien. The government covered it up for national security reasons. And the story grew over time, accumulating myths and exaggerations, until it became the Roswell we know today. This might be closest to the truth. A real incident involving unusual debris, government secrecy, and human tendency to fill gaps with speculation. Roswell's legacy is immense. It's the most famous UFO case in history. It's shaped how we think about UFOs, government cover-ups, and alien life. It's inspired countless movies, TV shows, and books. The X-Files, Independence Day, and dozens of other works draw directly from Roswell mythology. The town itself has become a pilgrimage site for UFO enthusiasts. The International UFO Museum and Research Center attracts thousands of visitors every year. There's an annual UFO festival. Roswell has embraced its alien reputation and turned it into cultural identity. But beyond pop culture, Roswell has had real impacts. It's influenced how the government handles UFO reports. The stigma around reporting UAPs that we've discussed in other videos, that comes partly from Roswell. For decades, military personnel who reported UFOs risked being dismissed or ridiculed, labeled as believing in Roswell-style conspiracies. That stigma is only now beginning to lift. Roswell also represents the complicated relationship between government secrecy and public trust. The government had legitimate reasons for keeping Project Mogul classified. Revealing the program would have told the Soviets we were trying to detect their nuclear tests. National security demanded secrecy. But that secrecy came at a cost. By lying about what crashed, even for understandable reasons, the government opened the door to conspiracy theories. And once that door opened, it was impossible to close. Decades later, when they finally revealed the truth, many people didn't believe them, because they'd lied before. This is the lesson of Roswell. Secrecy, even justified secrecy, breeds distrust. And once trust is lost, even truth sounds like another lie. So what really crashed at Roswell? The most likely answer, based on available evidence, is Project Mogul, a classified balloon program that local officers didn't recognize. But we can't be absolutely certain. The possibility of something more unusual, whether experimental technology or something else, remains. What we know for sure is this: something crashed. The government lied about it. Witnesses described unusual debris. And 77 years later, we still don't have all the answers. Maybe we never will. Maybe the truth is lost to time, classification, and fading memories. Or maybe, someday, the final classified documents will be released, and we'll finally know what happened in that New Mexico desert in July 1947. So what do you think? Was it really just a spy balloon? Was it experimental technology? Was it something extraterrestrial? Or was it a combination of real events and accumulated mythology? Share your thoughts in the comments. This topic generates passionate debate, and I want to hear your theories. If you enjoyed this investigation into the most famous UFO incident in history, hit that like button. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because we post new space mysteries every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Next time, we're exploring Oumuamua, the mysterious interstellar object that visited our solar system in 2017. It behaved in ways no asteroid or comet should, and a Harvard astronomer believes it might be an alien probe. We'll examine all the evidence. Until then, keep questioning, keep investigating, and remember, the truth is out there, even if we haven't found it yet.